You are currently handing over your most valuable mental real estate to a person who doesn't even realize they are occupying it. But I am going to show you how to finally evict them and reclaim the silence you thought you had lost forever. We have all been there at 3 o'clock in the morning when the house is completely still and the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator, but inside your mind it feels like a crowded courtroom where you are simultaneously the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the judge trying a case that should have been closed months or even years ago. This person who hurt you or embarrassed you or simply disregarded your feelings is sleeping soundly while you are wide awake replaying every word they said and every word you wish you had said in response. It feels like a physical weight in your chest because your brain is treating a memory like a current threat and therefore it refuses to let it go. We often call this living rent-free in your head because you are providing the space, the energy, and the emotional labor for someone who isn't even paying you the courtesy of an apology. But the real danger isn't just the lost sleep, it is the way this obsession begins to rewrite your personality until you are no longer the protagonist of your own life, but a supporting character in a drama that only you are watching. Imagine for a second that your mind is a high-end luxury apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of everything you want to achieve in this life. Now imagine that you've allowed a messy, destructive, and loud tenant to move in without a lease, and they are currently breaking the furniture and painting the walls a color you hate. You wouldn't just stand there and watch them do it in the physical world, so we have to understand why we allow it to happen in our mental world. The truth is that our brains are wired for survival, and when someone treats us poorly or leaves a situation unresolved, our biology interprets that as an open loop. It is a glitch in our evolutionary software that tells us if we just think about it one more time, we might find the solution that makes the pain go away. But there is no solution in rumination, because you are trying to solve a problem that exists in the past using tools that only work in the present. This leads to a cycle where the more you think about them, the deeper the neural pathway becomes, until thinking about this person is as automatic as breathing. But here is the twist that most people don't want to hear. We aren't actually obsessed with the person themselves, but rather we are obsessed with the version of ourselves that we lost when that person entered our lives. We are trying to win back our dignity or our sense of justice or our belief that the world is a fair place. Therefore, the first step to getting them out of your head isn't about them at all. It is about realizing that you're using this person as a placeholder for your own unhealed parts. You think that if you can just understand why they did what they did, then you can finally feel okay again, but seeking closure from the person who broke you is like asking a thief to return to the scene of the crime and help you fix the lock. It is never going to happen, so you have to learn how to create your own closure. This requires a radical shift in perspective, because right now you're looking at this person through a magnifying glass, which makes them look massive and overwhelming. You see their face and you hear their voice, and it fills your entire field of vision. But if you take that magnifying glass and turn it around, you realize they are actually quite small and distant. They only seem big because you have brought them so close to your eyes. This is where the concept of the pattern interrupt becomes your most powerful weapon. Every time that person's name pops into your head, you have to treat it like a telemarketer calling your phone. You don't have to pick up, and you certainly don't have to engage in a conversation. You recognize the ringtone, you see the caller ID, and you choose to let it ring until it stops. At first, it will feel like you are fighting a losing battle, because the brain loves a habit, and rumination is a very seductive habit. It gives you the illusion of control and makes you feel like you are doing work when you are actually just spinning your wheels in the mud. So you have to introduce a physical shift to break the mental loop. When you feel that familiar spike of anger or that sinking feeling in your stomach, you need to move your body or change your environment or do something that forces your brain to process new sensory data. This is because the brain has a limited amount of processing power, and if you flood it with the reality of the present moment, there is less room for the ghosts of the past. Think of your attention like a flashlight in a dark room. Right now you are shining that light directly on the person who hurt you, and everything else is in total darkness. You aren't seeing the opportunities in front of you or the people who actually love you because you are so focused on the one person who didn't. But you are the one holding the flashlight. You have the power to turn that beam of light towards something else. It sounds simple, but it is incredibly difficult because we have a biological addiction to the chemicals of stress. When we think about a toxic person, our body releases cortisol and adrenaline, and over time we start to crave that intensity even if it makes us miserable. We mistake the drama for depth and the conflict for connection. But real connection doesn't feel like a knot in your stomach, and real depth doesn't require you to sacrifice your peace of mind. You have to ask yourself what you are getting out of this obsession. Are you using it to avoid the silence of your own life? Are you using it as an excuse not to move forward because staying stuck in the past feels safer than facing an uncertain future? This is the chaos twist that we often ignore because it's easier to blame the tenant for being messy than it is to admit we are the ones who keep handing them the keys. We have to start practicing what I call mental boundaries. Just as you wouldn't let a stranger walk into your house and start throwing trash on the floor, you cannot let these thoughts enter your mind without a challenge. You need to develop a phrase or a mental image that signifies the end of the conversation. Some people use the word stop or enough, while others imagine a literal wall being built between them and the memory. It doesn't matter what the tool is as long as it signals to your subconscious that this line of thinking is no longer productive. Because the more you argue with a ghost, the more you become a ghost yourself. You start to disappear into the what-ifs and the should-haves until there is nothing left of the person you were before all this started. We have to acknowledge that some things in life are simply unfair and no amount of thinking will fix them. There is a specific kind of grief involved in letting go of the need for justice. You might never get the apology you deserve, and they might never realize how much they hurt you, and they might even go on to live a life that looks happy from the outside. That is the hardest pill to swallow, but it is also the one that sets you free. If your happiness is dependent on someone else's realization of their own flaws, then you are a prisoner to their level of self-awareness. And if they were self-aware, they probably wouldn't have treated you that way in the first place, so you are waiting for a miracle that isn't coming. Therefore, you have to take the power back by deciding that your peace is more important than being right. You have to decide that you are done being the curator of a museum dedicated to your own pain. Every time you replay the story, you are just dusting off the exhibits and making sure the lighting is perfect. You are keeping the trauma alive and well-fed, but if you stop feeding it, it will eventually starve. It won't happen overnight because these mental pathways are like deep grooves in a record. The needle wants to fall back into the same track every time the music starts, but you can scratch the record, you can make it unplayable. You do this by intentionally building new pathways and focusing on things that have nothing to do with that person. This isn't just positive thinking, it is neurological restructuring. You have to give your brain a new job to do. If you give it a vacuum, it will fill it with the thing it knows best, which in this case is the person living rent-free in your head. So you have to fill that space with something else, something big and demanding and exciting. Whether it is a new project or a physical challenge or a deep dive into a subject you've always wanted to learn, you need to occupy the territory before the intruder can return. There is a concept in psychology called the circle of influence, and most of us spend our lives focused on the circle of concern, which includes everything we care about but can't control, like other people's opinions or the way they treated us in the past. To evict the person in your head, you have to shrink your focus down to the circle of influence, which is only the things you can actually change today. You can change what you eat, you can change who you call, you can change the way you talk to yourself, but you cannot change the person who is haunting your thoughts. When you realize that you have zero influence over them, they lose their power. They become like a weather pattern. You don't get angry at the rain for being wet, you just grab an umbrella and move on with your day. The person in your head is just a storm that passed through a long time ago, but you are still standing in the puddle complaining about the water. It is time to step out of the puddle. It is time to realize that by keeping them in your head, you are actually extending the duration of the injury. If they hurt you once, that was their fault, but if they are still hurting you every day for a year, that is a collaboration. You're collaborating with your own suffering by refusing to look away. This is where we have to talk about the invisible loop of validation. We often keep people in our heads because we are waiting for them to validate our version of events. We want them to say, yes, you are right, I was wrong, and I am sorry. But seeking validation from an enemy is like asking a fire to keep you cool. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the elements involved. You have to validate yourself. You have to be the one to say that what happened was wrong, and I am allowed to be angry, but I am not allowed to let this anger destroy the rest of my life. There is a high cost to this kind of mental clutter. It affects your ability to be present with the people who actually matter. It makes you cynical and defensive, and it robs you of your creativity. You cannot build a beautiful future if both of your hands are busy clutching the grievances of the past. You have to drop the bags to open the door. And yes, I know it feels like if you let go, you're letting them get away with it. You feel like your anger is a form of punishment for them, as if your misery is somehow reaching across space and time to make them feel bad. But it isn't. Your anger is a poison that you are drinking while waiting for the other person to die. It is a completely one-sided transaction where you pay the full price and they get all the benefits of your attention. We also need to address the what-if trap, because that is the primary way these tenants stay in our mental apartments. What if I had said this instead? Or what if I had seen the red flags earlier? Or what if they change for the next person and give them everything I wanted? These questions are designed to keep you in a state of perpetual uncertainty, and uncertainty is the fuel that keeps the rumination engine running. But the truth is that what if is a fictional story. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what happened and what you're doing right now. When you catch yourself sliding into the what-if world, you need to anchor yourself back in the what-is world. What is happening right now is that you are safe, you are breathing, and you have a whole life ahead of you that has nothing to do with that person. You have to treat your mind like a sacred space because it is the only place you truly live. You might live in a house or a city, but you actually live inside your thoughts. And if those thoughts are constantly focused on someone who doesn't value you, then you are living in a slum. You deserve to live in a palace. You deserve to have mental silence and clarity. This requires you to be ruthless with your attention. You have to stop checking their social media, you have to stop asking mutual friends about them, and you have to stop looking for hidden meanings in things they said months ago. Every time you do those things, you are renewing their lease for another month. You are saying, here is more of my time and here is more of my energy, please stay a little longer. You have to cut off the supply of attention. Attention is the currency of the soul, and you are currently overspending on a bad investment. Think about the most peaceful person you know. They aren't peaceful because they've never been hurt or because everyone treats them perfectly. They are peaceful because they have a high standard for what they allow to take up space in their minds. They know how to filter the noise from the signal. They know that not every insult requires a response and not every conflict requires a resolution. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing the game entirely. Imagine you are in a boxing ring with this person and you are exhausted and bleeding, but you keep swinging because you want to land that one final knockout blow. The only problem is that the person you are fighting isn't even in the ring anymore. You are boxing a shadow. You are throwing punches at the air and wondering why you are the only one getting tired. The way to win is to simply climb out of the ring, put down the gloves and walk out of the arena. The fight is over the moment you decide it is. And I know there's a fear that if you stop thinking about them, you will forget the lesson and it will happen again. But you don't need to relive the trauma to remember the boundaries. The lesson is etched in your wisdom, now not in your rumination. You can trust yourself to recognize the signs next time without having to keep the wound open to remind yourself that it hurt. Healing isn't the absence of the memory, it is the absence of the emotional charge attached to the memory. You will always know what happened, but eventually you will be able to look at it the way you look at a movie you saw a long time ago. You remember the plot, but you don't feel the character's pain anymore. That is the goal, to reach a state of indifference. Hate isn't the opposite of love because hate still requires a massive amount of energy and connection. The opposite of love is indifference. It is the state where that person could walk past you on the street and you wouldn't feel your heart rate spike or your stomach flip. They would just be another stranger in a world full of strangers. To get there, you have to start treating them as if they are already gone. You have to stop giving them a seat at your table. When you sit down to dinner or when you go out with friends, you have to mentally leave that person at the door. If they try to join the conversation, you acknowledge the thought and then you pivot back to the person sitting across from you. This is the work of a lifetime, but it gets easier with every repetition. You are building a muscle, the muscle of presence. And the stronger that muscle gets, the less room there is for the ghosts of the past to flex their power. You have to remember that your mind is a garden, and whatever you water will grow. If you water the weeds of resentment, they will eventually choke out the flowers of your joy. So stop watering the weeds, let them wither and die from neglect. It might take a while for the roots to dry up, but if you stop the flow of attention, it is inevitable. You are the architect of your internal world, and you have the power to redesign it whenever you want. You can tear down the old structures of obsession and build something new and beautiful in their place. You can choose to be obsessed with your own growth and your own potential instead of someone else's failures. And the moment you truly realize that your life is too short and too precious to waste even one more minute on someone who isn't even thinking about you is the moment the eviction is complete. You will look around your mental apartment and notice how quiet it is and how much light is coming through the windows. You will realize that the tenant is finally gone and they didn't take anything with them that you can't replace. In fact, they left behind a lot of extra space for you to fill with things that actually make you happy. So take a deep breath and feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. The keys are back in your hands and the locks have been changed, and for the first time in a long time, you are finally alone in your own head and it feels incredible. But don't get too comfortable in the silence just yet, because there is a whole world out there waiting for the version of you that isn't haunted by the past, and you might be surprised at how much faster you can run when you aren't carrying someone else's baggage. There is a depth to this freedom that most people never reach because they are too afraid to let go of the pain that has become their identity, but you are not most people. You are the one who decided to stop being a landlord for a ghost and started being the master of your own destiny. And that is a shift that changes